Hey kids, it's Mrs. Davis. I'm coming to you from my house again, and we are going to be working on partitioning whole shapes again today. This will be lesson number 2. So in our last lesson, we took a whole shape and we fractioned it, partitioned it, divided it into equal parts using a straight line. And when we did that, we took that whole shape and we partitioned it so that it was in half. And then we could notice that there were 2 halves of a whole. So we also were getting some practice with some shapes at our house. In our last lesson, you were thinking about looking for a circle shape and tracing it. And we discovered that you could take a vertical line and partition a circle. You could use a horizontal straight line and also partition. And then our final way with the circle was using a straight line diagonally. 3 different ways to take a whole circle and divide it into 2 equal parts so that we have 2 halves of a whole. We also took a look at a whole rectangle. We used our vertical line and our horizontal, and you can divide a rectangle into 2 equal parts using a diagonal line also. That's what we worked on in our last lesson. Today, I am going to just model for you using this 2-dimensional shape, a square. Now, in my spiral, I have already gotten started. I traced my 4 squares, and I labeled this one whole because we're always starting with a whole shape. And then I was able to get my first straight line vertically, and I divided this square into 2 equal parts. I'm gonna label that. Let me grab my pencil, and I'm gonna use this vocab because we can interchange some words and be talking about the same math skills. And one thing when you are partitioning your shapes, we do want both sides, both halves to be equal. I noticed when I divided this that my 2 halves of this whole were actually rectangle shapes. That's kind of interesting, I think. All right, now I'm gonna flip my spiral over. I've got 2 other squares. I'm going to go ahead and partition this square with a horizontal line. And I'm gonna label this one using this word. And I'm gonna say I have 2 halves. Again, the 2 halves are equal. And when I partition using that horizontal line, I have 2 rectangle halves also. Now I'm going to do my favorite partition here. I'm going to start at the corner of the square, and I am going to use a diagonal line. This one is my favorite way to partition a square. And look at that. My 2 halves are actually triangle shapes. That's pretty cool. So sometimes when you're partitioning a shape, the 2 halves won't be in the same shape as the original whole shape. That's very interesting to me. Now on this one, I am going to be shading 1/2 like we did with our circle. So I'm grabbing my colored pencil, and I'm just going to quickly shade in 1/2. And then we're going to use our numbers. You know, we can draw a model, we can write words to represent a math idea, and we can also use numbers. So we want to be able to show our math ideas in different ways using pictures, words, and numbers. Okay, quickly got that done. Now I've shaded 1/2 of my square, so I'm going to go ahead and label that with, and I want to show you that as I do it. I'm going to write the number 2 down at the bottom, and the 2, remember, that stands for 2 halves. 1/2 and 2/2, and then 1/2 is shaded. So one part is shaded, or 1/2 of the square is shaded. So this is 1 of 2 parts. All right, now let's talk about your assignment that you're going to work on. So in packet number 2 that we sent home a couple weeks ago, there are a few sheets that I want you to work on today. I want you to look in your packet and see if you can pull this sheet out. At the top it says halves. It says halves are the 2 equal parts that make a whole. So this is a little definition and model up there for you. There are 1, 2, 3 jobs on this sheet. The first job says circle the shapes that show halves. So if you've got 2 equal parts, then you're going to circle that shape. You're going to evaluate all those shapes and then decide which show 2 equal parts. Down here in the second section, it says color 1/2 of each shape. So you're shading in on this one, just like I modeled for you. So you're looking at each shape. All of the shapes in this second row are divided in equal parts. So you're going to shade 1/2 of each of those shapes. And then the final activity says partition each shape into halves. So you're going to take your pencil and you're going to think about taking a straight line, and you're going to section, divide, fraction each shape in half so that there are 2 halves. Then I want you to look for this shape sheet. There are some models at the top, and there are a couple different jobs that you're going to be doing when you practice. Again, you're going to be practicing just with halves of a whole. And this first section right here, and the second and this third are all the same job. At the top it says find the figures, that just means the shapes, that show halves, and you're going to color 1/2. And there's that little number representation. So look at each of these shapes and decide if they are partitioned into 2 equal parts. If they are, you're going to shade 1/2 of the shape. Don't be fooled. And then down at the bottom, they've got 2 crackers. And they want you to take your pencil and they want you to partition, divide, fraction this cracker and this cracker into 2 equal parts, but in 2 different ways. I know you can do that. You've got this. And then finally, we're going to be working with food, because I don't know about you, but I like food, and you know, sometimes I have to share with another person. So we're going to be looking at some food, and we're going to decide if it's partitioned into 2 equal parts so that we can share it with another person in a fair way. So they've got a model up here. They've got a whole cookie or cracker. It's divided in half, and 1/2 is shaded. So they've got that model. It says at the top, find the figures that show halves and color 1/2. So you're going to look at each model of food. If the food is partitioned in 2 equal parts, you're going to shade 1 part. So you're going to evaluate each one separately. You've got this row, this row, and then at the bottom. So you're deciding if the food, whatever it is sectioned, partitioned, fractioned, sliced in half in 2 equal parts. If it is, you're going to shade in 1 part. All right, well, you've got some activities to do, so I'm going to let you get to work. All right, don't forget that you are working on 3 sheets today, and I will be back again with another math lesson tomorrow, and we will be working forward with our partitioning of 2-dimensional shapes. So until next time, have a good one.